Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Made by Folk live stream. Thanks very much for joining us today. And I'm very excited to welcome our guest for tonight, the co-founder of the Future London Academy, Ekaterina Solomeina, who I've worked with in the past many times, and I'm super happy to finally have her on the show again. And we're going to talk a little bit about all the things that she has learned about learning over all the years that she has managed multiple courses in the creative industry. And I'm super excited to talk to her. So let's bring her on and say hello. Hey, Katerina, hello. Let's test if we can all hear you.
Hello, Glenn. So good to see you. And
Beautiful.
I love that we are matching. Yellow is my favorite color, so that's a good start.
I had to be on brand, of course.
Love it.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me tonight. I do always massively appreciate it. And you and me have been. I can't remember when I joined you guys for the first course, like in 2017, maybe something like that. So it's a while ago that you and me have always been chatting over the years.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it has been so long ago, and I feel like we always aligned on kind of our thoughts on creative industry. So we always had wonderful chats when you're in London. And I'm glad to be on your podcast because I'm usually the one hosting podcasts.
I know.
It's good to be on the other side.
It's always fun. Well, tell us a little bit about where we're talking to you today. I think this is the new office. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, we did. You follow me on Instagram. So, yes, we did move to a new office. So a bit about myself, I suppose. I was a creative director and designer for a while. I worked with fantastic people in the industry. I was originally born in Russia and moved to London about 13 years ago. And I was privileged to work with some of the best people in creative industry here, including Michael Wolff, the founder of Wolfolins, and people like Donatella Versace. And I feel like I've been blessed just meeting great people and learning from them. And I suppose that's what sparked the idea for Future London Academy, because when I was in Russia, I didn't have access to all these wonderful people. And when you reach a certain point in your career, like let's say 10, 15 years of experience, and you want to find new knowledge, you want to find people you can learn from, it becomes very difficult because you can find any sort of basic course on YouTube or anywhere, like if you want to learn something from scratch, but when you already have experience, it's very difficult to find those nuggets of wisdom. And I was very lucky because I had access to some of the best people and I could ask them questions and get all sorts of answers that helped me in my career. So that's why we decided that we want to create a place, a platform, a space for people like myself who work in the creative industry and already very good at what they do and already very successful in their career, but still have a thirst for learning, have passion for being better and learning from other people, to actually come to London and meet from all the brilliant agencies, creative teams and leaders that are out here.
Yeah. I mean, having been on some of the courses with you, it is a whirlwind of activity. And like I never actually asked you, when you first started the Future London Academy, that was like a side project basically, or you still had your full-time job and you
Correct.
thought, oh well, this is a great idea, I'll try and run it, and then it kind of snowballed into what's now your full-time job.
Correct. And this is exactly how I would recommend anyone to start any business, especially if you don't have a super wealthy uncle who can give you like millions of pounds that you can just do anything with. But in my case, I had a full-time job that I loved. I was a creative director in a fantastic company. I had many freelance projects on the sides. I just loved doing design and everything to do with branding. But I had this curiosity and passion for learning and bringing people together and organizing things. So it was essentially, yes, a side project that I would take all my holidays from my work to actually do this. And I loved it. It was so satisfying bringing people from all around the world to London. We had this group of 20, 30 people, all creative directors from brilliant companies. And and running their own agencies or working for fantastic brands. And they would be in the same room and we would go to different companies and agencies and meet their teams. And it was just so immersive. I just loved doing it for myself, essentially. And yeah, like I didn't want to give up my full-time job at that point, but it started growing and it started taking more and more of my time. And eventually I thought maybe that's the right time to actually to choose whether I want this thing to grow or I want to pursue a bit more corporate ladder. But definitely I'm not a corporate person. So I decided to jump off the cliff and run this full time together with my fantastic co-founder.
No regrets. Come on. I mean, it's been great being able to join a couple of those courses out throughout the years, and just I've always been amazed at how you guys seem to attract not just really talented agencies to actually talk to your group, to the group of people that you lead around the town and the city, but also the actual participants, like the people that were there. Like were always incredible, and I'm still in touch with a hell of a lot of them. So I've always been really thankful for being a part of it.
Yeah,
But
and you brought the energy, I have to say. Like everyone always says, like Glenn is the best. Why don't you meet Glenn? And I feel like
checks in the post.
I have to say there is some magic, and we still don't know what the secret of it. We do attract really nice people,
Yeah,
and you've met them. They're all very friendly, very enthusiastic. So yeah, I also have so many friends that I made through this, which
I
is yeah.
bet. Can you still remember like the first course then, while you were still in this sort of like early foundation phase where you were just trying to figure it out? Can you remember what that first course was
I
and what it was
do,
like?
and it's a hilarious story because at that point we thought it would be a great idea to actually for everyone to live together as well, because that would be so cool. All these creative directors come into London, we rent a massive mansion for them, and they all live and like collaborate together. That was like the
Oh,
whole
I missed
idea.
I missed the mansion. I should have joined
Well,
much.
that's another story. We actually rented Paul Oakenfold's house,
What?
which was a complete coincidence. It was, I think, on Airbnb or something, and it's the whole story that we didn't know it was. It was like a beautiful, beautiful, like this townhouse in North London, and we just were alarmed that the person who was renting it didn't have a real name, so it was a fake name. So we were very worried that what if it's a scam? What it's not real?
Yeah.
Oh no, the house, like we were very worried. So we came, obviously we were in London, so we went to check the house and meet the owners, and then when they gave their real name, we realized who the house used to belong to. That was like a fun side story, which is like very weird. And yeah, since then we realized that bringing people to live in one house is a fun idea and a logistical nightmare. So from now on, people actually choose where they want to live and select accommodation based on what they want to experience, whether it's a 5-star hotel with a private garden or whether it's a hostel and they're trying to save up money.
That makes a hell of a lot more sense. I can only imagine the nightmare that it must have been. So did you guys start with like branding courses then, or can you remember what the first topic was?
Yeah, so at that point, we just saw kind of design as one amazing industry and the whole idea, because when you reach that level of experience, you're kind of curious about all sorts of other areas that might not necessarily be yours. So
Yeah.
if you already do branding, then you actually want to learn what's slightly outside of your kind of day-to-day life. So we actually mixed. So I think on the first course there was Pentagram, Michael Wolff was on the first one. We had NB Studio, we had Purpose. We had some of the most fantastic companies in London. Seriously, we were in Pentagram's office, and Harry Pierce was very welcoming, very charming as always, and telling about his dreams and how he writes his dreams in his notebook every day he wakes up. And it was very surreal. So it was more or less about branding. But at that point, we kept it very open. Actually, people who came to the course as well were not necessarily from branding. There were some from digital and UX, some from illustration, some from branding. But they kind of had that passion for learning what they don't know. And I think the biggest piece of feedback that gave me an aha moment when after I think a second program, one person came to me and said, you know what, now I know what I don't know. And I think that's the biggest thing we can all do to ourselves when we already reach that kind of level of expertise. It's very difficult to understand what we don't know, and finding a way to discover that is already a big win.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you must have picked up so many. That should be one of your next projects. I know you kind of do it at the end of each course, like sort of summarize all the golden nuggets of information for the participants. But I'm sure, when you guys hit your 10th year, you've not hit 10 years yet. So like when you hit your 10 years, you can do maybe like a book of insights. But you must have picked up a hell of a lot of like really useful information for yourself along the way. I mean, this is like as much of an upward learning curve for yourself as it is for all the participants.
And I have to say, all these years I was selfishly creating things for myself. So
That's totally
at the beginning, I was very curious to learn from all these people, and it was just such a great opportunity to do that in a more structured way. And I'm still attending every single program that we run, because the value that I get from learning from not just, as you said, the experts that we bring, but also from everyone in the group is just incredible. So why would I ever miss it? And I definitely picked up so many things on design, on leadership, on team management, on so many things that I personally am curious about. That, yes, definitely I'm still learning. And the way we create new topics and courses, now that we have online stuff as well, we, for example, just ran a course on social media because we are curious about social media ourselves.
Totally.
We're like, what else should we know about all these new platforms and how to create a strategy and kind of market things there? And we brought the best people from like Twitter and Spotify and Oatly and all these fantastic influencers who actually told us how they plan social media and how they think about it and how they generate sales through social media as well. So
amazing.
Yeah, essentially I learn every single time. So yeah, I'm very lucky.
Definitely. But I think like your initial piece of advice was really useful of, try and do something that you enjoy, but try and do it on the side until you kind of figure out that it kind of takes over your life. But that's like also really good advice of just doing something for your own personal gain that you can benefit from means that inadvertently someone else will probably be able to benefit from that same information. Whole reason I'm doing these interviews is purely because I have interest in all these topics and talking to all these people. And I mean, sure, I do have to kind of look at how many people view these things. But overall, I'm trying to not get too bogged down with viewing figures. I basically want to talk to interesting people who I like talking to. I've got a list of basically, I think my list is titled, people I'd like to have a drink with.
Oh, I love it. That's brilliant.
So,
and I think it was, I forgot if it was someone like Tim Ferriss or Nassim Taleb, one of the people who kind of reflect on life.
Yeah.
And I think their advice was, when picking a project, understand what you will learn from it, and basically the gain beyond or what you will get out of it beyond just the kind of the direct, whether it's financial, like reputational. So maybe you'll collaborate with an interesting person, or basically if the project fails. So if you start this new thing and it doesn't go anywhere, like you said with the podcast, imagine like it doesn't go anywhere. Would you still be okay with what you've got out of it?
yes.
And if the answer is yes, then definitely go do it, because that's exactly was the reason for us. Even if it didn't work out and it wouldn't become a business, I would not regret a single second for doing it, because every single experience was amazing and memorable and gave me so many friends, including you.
Hey!
So definitely, that's a good advice.
Nice one. Well, so like the thing that I always appreciated about the Future London Academy format is, bringing people to a place. I think that's like one major factor that I always thought was quite unique. you're not trying to do it all remote, although I guess over the last year you probably had to make some adjustments to that thing, and hopefully we can all go back to London someday and run around town again. But I think the remote angle was super interesting. Sorry, the location makes a big difference because all these companies are in London most of the time for like very good reason. It's just like a creative hub. And the point I'm trying to make is bringing people to one place, bringing them from all sorts of different backgrounds and different countries and different industries in some cases, I think makes for like a really interesting setup to learn in. And I wonder, like, was that already part of the original format when you started? Was that literally like bringing a diverse group together to try and lead them through the city from A to B? Was that the core idea from the start?
I think it's a good question, and I have to say it kind of developed and evolved. I think the idea of experiential learning was always there, that I can't learn myself. I'm like a horrible learner. I fell asleep on every single lecture at university. I can't sit still. Like even meetings, my previous colleagues know I fell asleep in many, many meetings in front of the clients as well, which is quite embarrassing. But essentially, if I'm not engaged with what's going on, I just can't deal with it.
Yeah.
So when we started thinking about learning, and it wasn't learning in the sense of education, it was learning in the sense of experiencing. Mm-hmm. I always knew it needs to be exciting, something that I would personally enjoy, and going to different places, meeting people, enjoying London, seeing everything that London has to offer culturally, from street art to the best galleries here, is definitely a big part of that inspiration that you get. And that's the reason why London design industry is so incredible, because of the environment. Mm-hmm. So we knew that has to be part of it. In terms of the diversity of people, I have to say it was a side effect that we did not expect. And I wanted to bring people from outside of the UK to experience London, but I could have never imagined how broad our geography will go, because now I think we have over 65 countries that attended our programs, and that's just mad. And that means I met people from 65 different countries, and all of them, again, working in creative or innovative industries, and they're just like doing fantastic things, and they're telling the stories about their companies and their design communities in Nigeria or in Guatemala or in Australia or in Canada. And it just gives me so much inspiration and kind of new way of thinking that definitely became a side effect that became a core. And I love that we are able to do that. And now we do it through online format. But yes, as soon as we go back to face-to-face.
Well, tell me a little bit about the online format, because those two aspects are like so core to like what makes the course so great. How have you managed? I mean, I've not done. I have to admit, I've not done the remote course. So, have you managed? Do you feel like you've managed to sort of recreate some of that vibe, or do you feel like where? Because obviously, I think a lot of companies, especially in the education industry or in the creative industry, have kind of like come to terms with, okay, well, like we're probably going to have some formats that will live online and that will be remote, like this interview series. As much as I'd love to travel to all these places and speak to people personally, it is much easier doing it from my home.
Yeah, I think you're right here. It serves different purposes, and every format is right for certain things. Yeah. So our online things will never replace the physical experiences that we do, because they serve different purposes. And for example, what we managed to achieve with online courses that we do is the geography. So as you said, people who were not ever were able to travel to London because of how expensive the tickets are, and then you need accommodation and everything else, they were still able to experience these things around that, like the speakers and the experts that we bring together. From our side as well, we finally were able to reach experts from around the world, so we were not limited just to the London design community. We had people from California, from Canada, from Australia, from Germany, so from all these wonderful places that we always wanted as part of our program, but because it was so London focused, we couldn't bring them. So it definitely serves different purposes, and both of them have their kind of pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
You have to take the week out of your work to travel to London and experience the London event, while this one you can do in between your work. So there are definitely pros and cons for each of the formats. I'm obviously a people person. Yeah, I love being around people, and but I do see the feedback from everyone who attended our online programs and saying that it's just incredible. They finally can touch and see the behind the scenes of what happens in the best companies around the world.
Well, that's great. Like, so you'll kind of keep both running side by side in the future then, probably, since they worked out well.
Yes, that's the plan. And as you probably know, we're also launching the executive program for design leaders. That's a completely different beast, and that is definitely a next level of education. And going back to the point of selfishly creating courses for myself, this is definitely my new step in my personal education, that I'm now curious about the business side of things now that I run a company, and I was never taught how to run a company as majority of the creative people. And now I'm obsessed with things like operations and finance and things that I actually genuinely like them, and I secretly get curious about very weird things like logistics and supply chains, and I thought there needs to be more of that for creative people, especially now that design is recognized by big giants and organization, and designers get in the boardroom and you have to talk to the CFO. That requires understanding what world they live in. So essentially creating like an executive MBA for creative people is something that I'm now super passionate about. So yeah, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, it's a great add-on. I have been eyeing that one up as well when I saw it come up on your website. Well, I think it's great that you kind of made your your interest into a job, and I guess, I mean, would you also call it part of your hobby? Is it sort of all mashed up? Do you still have other hobbies outside work? I think this is a topic that you mentioned you struggle with a little bit of actually sort of breaking away from.
Yeah, you touched on my real pain point. So I'm in the process of finding a new hobby, and I feel like it's very important for people to have side projects and hobbies. And Future London Academy has been my side project for so long that when it became my full-time job, I kind of lost my hobby. And now I'm looking for a new one. And there is a process, just in case everyone wondered. I recently read the book by Stephen Kotler. I don't know if any of you heard of The Art of Impossible. And essentially he talks there about kind of the process of curiosity to passion to purpose. So essentially we all have things that we're curious about, something random we might not know enough about, whether it's gardening or cars or, I don't know, baking. It could be lots of things we're all curious about, and we might know very little about these things. It's not about how much we know about them. We just generally, I'm curious about operations and logistics now, so maybe that would be my next passion. So then we start kind of looking at all these curiosities and see where they overlap. So it doesn't necessarily mean like if you like baking, that means you need to open a baking business. It's all about finding those spots in between where, oh, you like baking and you like running and you like, education. How about you create a course on nutrition for runners, something like that.
Yeah.
So you kind of find those overlaps where all of your curiosities or some of your curiosities overlap, and then you very, very, very slowly develop them. And I think the key there is that some of them won't work. And if you put too much pressure, it's like, I found my new passion. This is my new thing, my new hobby. And that's the mistake I made. I found a couple of these that were like, I'm really interested in jewelry and I'm really interested in drawing. I will be drawing jewelry and it will be all on social media. That's kind of the new thing. And then I tried and it was like, no, you know what? I'm not enjoying any part of it, and kind of I forced myself. So you
But
develop essentially from curiosity then to passion to purpose.
it sounds almost like you always try to then turn a hobby into something more. Can a hobby not just be a hobby with no purpose, like
Well,
but with no outcome other than the doing of the thing?
it's a good point, and I have to say maybe it's down to a person. There is definitely there needs to be an enjoyment in its on its own, so it can't
Yeah,
be just because of the purpose. That's why the curiosity part is very important, that you actually want to develop. But unless it's very difficult to sustain a hobby if you're not progressing in it in some sort of way, in whatever progress means to you.
yeah,
It might be you're getting slightly better at it, it might be you're getting more people involved in it, whatever that is for you. It doesn't mean business or money, it means something is happening there that keeps your passion.
yeah. Some kind of progression that you can see or feel or see that you're improving on.
Exactly. And then as soon as that develops into passion, that kind of you realize, okay, that really fuels me, like I can't stop thinking about. And then that's where you turn the purpose on, kind of, because it helps you to actually sustain it. So if you know I'm doing it because I'm helping lots of people by doing this hobby, that's a great purpose. Or might be your purpose, it helps me to relax after the long day, and that's your purpose. It's also a good purpose, but unless you're clear about why you're doing it, it will be very difficult to sustain your amazing side project. So
Yeah,
that's kind of the idea.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I haven't done this side project for so
Do you
goddamn
have a
long.
hobby now? Do you have something you're curious about now?
Um, I played. No, I quit tennis when we had kids. My dog. Can you call my dog a hobby? No, I currently there's very little additional time for hobbies, sadly.
Well, you do
But
have a family. I wouldn't say that's a hobby, but that takes a lot of time.
yes, yeah. Let's just call that my family. My family's my hobby.
It's a good one, yeah.
Um, well, it's it's just such a interesting way of how you even seem to look at those additional things that you can do with your time of like how can I learn from that and how can I improve those processes. That seems to definitely be the way you look at many different things. Well, how do you see once you found this miracle hobby that's gonna work out for you, like how do you see that working into your daily, like your daily habits, because you've got like I guess a lot to do with the course as well, and then do you try and find something that works into like a gap that you have, or are you not even concerned about how your hobbies work into your routine?
I feel like I've always been a person who tries to fit in too much in life, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there are people who like that and people who hate it. I'm definitely a person who likes too much things going on, and I probably have ADD and probably some other brain issues. But I get so bored when there is nothing going on, and basically when I was studying university, I was doing 2 degrees while having two full-time jobs. Don't ask me
What?
how, but I had very little sleep, and I loved it. I like there wasn't a single day when I questioned like why am I doing this? Because I was working for one of the most famous companies in Russia, like the biggest design agency. There was a dream, like a pentagram of London, and why like so that's already a dream. While studying design, which was also a dream, and I also studied multimedia, which was just happening, like it was only starting. So that was like a curious thing. And then I had a side job where I had my own brand, so they just hired me like so that was like also kind of a dream. So I was like, why give up one of those where I love all four of these things that I do? So yeah, exactly, like and then but eventually when I moved to London or to the UK, I ended up for about half a year when I was finishing here at a university one year study, and I had only university, and I literally went mad. Like I did my sports, I did like my friends and drinks and all of these things, but the main thing was only studying. And yeah, that didn't work out well for me. The thing is, I wasn't even studying well, because the fact that I had one thing didn't mean I would put 100% of my energy in it. It meant just like I was bored and I couldn't even put any energy in my studies. So I learned my lesson. I need lots of things going on. And yeah, definitely there will be time and space for it. I have no doubt. And there are 24 hours in the day. And like, if you sleep, well, what, 7 hours? Like, the rest of the day is all yours. So definitely.
Yeah, sleep when you're dead.
Yes, that's my mantra.
Well, we filled half an hour super quickly already. So I think my closing question would probably be, you've given us like some really good pieces of advice already on side projects, on starting them like as a literal side project, and then letting it see if it can develop into more. Also doing something that you're passionate and interested about, and that you can actually find some personal benefit from, because that inadvertently will hopefully feed into other areas, or to your audience. So anything else that you'd like to leave our audience with, potentially on learning, or maybe on where you see like creative education going in the future? Because I think like this whole experiential learning is like a really valid format, and I think you always learn just as much from the people around you as from the person talking at you. So I think like the Future Learning Academy has like a hell of a lot of potential, on a larger scale.
I think this question probably can be answered in like another half an hour.
Well, we
but
can. I'll lead to that, but you can give us a short version. We'll do the rest on
I'll give you a
Instagram.
shorter version. So I think I'll start with first, which is kind of future of education, what you mentioned about people. And I think that the interesting kind of thing for people to ponder about is that education was created in whatever ancient time as an add-on, not as the core thing. It was more apprenticeship and craftsmanship, and like you first follow your mentor, follow your whoever, and learn everything from them. And kind of formal education was more as an add-on to have a good dinner conversation. So you might have like your philosophy that you would study, so you can have a good dinner conversation. So it was never to actually do what you need to do. It was more an extra thing. And we somehow messed it up and thought that education, as we see it now, is something that you have to have, otherwise you won't get a job or something, which is a ridiculous point. And we actually do learn the most from the people that we surround ourselves with. So I think that I definitely can say that I learned the most from either people that I worked with, people that I met. So curating that kind of journey of people that you meet is a separate art, and education or places where you study is a good way, because you meet people there who probably have the same passions. You might meet a teacher who might be good, doesn't mean he will be good. Some of them might be good. So there are definitely some elements. So I'll leave it there. Just the education as it is now is not the way as it should be. And there is more to rethink in that in general, in the system and in the way we think about it. But I also want to leave with one advice in terms of learning, because education and learning are completely two different things.
Please.
And I'm super passionate about learning. I'm definitely a lifelong learner. I don't know how many courses I get a year, and how like many, like again, side things that I try to do to learn something new. So I definitely love learning, and I am always curious about why we learn some things faster and better than others. How can we learn things better, especially in the context of the company that we run, which helps people to learn. So I don't want to waste anyone's time. I hate courses where it's you go there and like sit there and you didn't learn anything, because I've bought some of those courses as well where you didn't learn anything and you don't know why you wasted your time right now. So, and I'm easily bored as well. So all of these things like play the parts in like my journey of understanding learning. So I think one key ingredient that I would recommend people to start with is the typical start with why. And one thing about learning, it can't be forced on you. That's why schools don't work, by the way. But you can't learn something like no one can force you into learning something. They can tell you things. Doesn't mean you will learn them. You can't be forced into learning. And especially in the age, like in professional environment where we are now, where we have kind of all sorts of responsibility and decisions and freedom to make our own choices, you can't tell someone you have to go on this course. That's why I never suggest people buying courses gifts unless the person really wanted that and it was more like an indication. But saying someone like, you know what, you should learn this is never a good idea. Person needs to want to learn something to actually learn it and to get the most out of the experience they get. They might have just a slight curiosity about it, like the level of want can be different, and it doesn't mean they need to be desperate, but there needs to be the initial reasoning inside, very intrinsic in the person. So then it will be easier to overcome other things that will come up with learning, because learning is hard. Learning requires time, learning requires energy, it requires attention. It's not easy. So you can't be forced and be asked to do all of these things that are super draining. So it's the same kind of idea of salad versus donuts. Like we all think like salads are good for us and we all should eat salads, but then we see a donut and we're like, oh, well, like I want this more. Same with learning. If we are pushed into that, if we don't have a reason to do that, every time we see Netflix, we would rather watch Netflix than any learning that was offered to us, because it's just more fun and you feel more passionate about maybe watching movies than looking at the course. So start with why you want to learn, and then you can build that into your learning. So if you know you're learning because you have this pain point or your challenge at your work, in your project, and this is why you're taking this course, this is what you try to overcome, you'll ask the right questions, you'll get the answers that you need, you connect with people who have same pain, you'll get so much more from any learning experience that you have, and you won't give up because you know why you're doing it, as well as the reward part. Same as with any diet or anything, you can't be just eating green salad all the time. Just promise yourself that if you do this, maybe it's a hard lesson, maybe it's not the fun lesson that you're taking and you actually requires a lot of energy, maybe you will get a donut, maybe you will watch a Netflix afterwards, or you have a day off. Like, also be quite realistic about how you learn and don't try to make it harder for yourself than it needs to be. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to enhance your life, not make it miserable. So that's my key advice about learning.
I think that's amazing advice and a very good way to end our interview as well. What we're going to do now, for anyone still watching, is we're going to move over to Instagram to have a Ask Me Anything session where you can actually ask Ekaterina some questions as well, and we'll continue on some of these topics a little bit further there. So we'll be over there in about 5 minutes time, and you can just head to the Future London Academy channel or to our channel, and you'll see us right at the top, and we'll see you there shortly. Ekaterina, thank you very much for taking the time.
Lovely talking to you, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
Bye folks.